This is Jed Distler, and welcome to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. You can subscribe to the Piano Maven podcast by going to the Substack link in our episode description, and I have a Substack page devoted to the Piano Maven podcast. And if you take out a paid subscription, you will get monthly downloads at the beginning of each month and other goodies from time to time throughout the year. But thank you so much for considering taking out a subscription because it will help keep this podcast going throughout the year. I'm going to talk about the 33 Variations on a Waltz by Diabelli, but not Beethoven's composition, but rather the 33 Diabelli Variations by the German composer and pianist named Franz Hummel, who lived from 1939 until 2022. As a pianist, Franz Hummel's gifts were recognized and encouraged by such luminaries as the pianist Ellie Nye, the conductor Hans Knappertsbusch, and even Richard Strauss. During the 1960s and 70s, Franz Hummel made a good number of piano recordings. According to one website, Hummel was credited for making over 60 LPs that encompassed the entire classical and modern repertoire. I myself have not heard nor seen any of these LPs, although every once in a while a Franz Hummel piano LP turns up on eBay. Recently I saw on eBay that somebody was selling a copy of Franz Hummel playing the Liszt B minor sonata, and the price looked pretty reasonable, but then when I looked at the $50 shipping cost, I thought, nah, forget about it. Although I am genuinely curious. Anyway, Franz Hummel basically stopped concertizing in 1973 in order to devote himself exclusively to composition, although he did make at least one piano recording as an improviser, collaborating with the violinist Liana Izakadze. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Anyway, this is a 2-CD set of these fantastic free improvisations for piano and violin. It came out on a 2-disc release called Maximal Music. It was on the Arte Nova label. As a composer, Franz Hummel was pretty prolific. His output included symphonic and ballet scores, chamber music, many operas, and some large-scale piano pieces. Recordings of Hummel's compositions are not easy to source, although you can find quite a few things on YouTube. But in general, it's hard to pinpoint Hummel's multifaceted gifts and stylistic preferences. At least I have trouble doing so. For example, he has this violin concerto, which is basically a half hour's worth of gnarly dissonance and grand gestures that somehow holds your attention, but the music has almost no charm whatsoever. And then his second piano sonata is kind of interesting. It's very well-crafted piano writing that is kind of busy and relentless. I describe it sort of as the love child of Ferruccio Busoni and Roger Sessions, for lack of coming up with something more clever to say. But I actually think that his most interesting and fascinating solo piano opus is that original set of 33 variations that Franz Hummel composed on that very same Diabelli waltz that Beethoven used for his Opus 120 set of 33 variations. As you would expect, of course, Franz Hummel's harmonic language is quite different than Beethoven's. It touches upon the expanded tonality that you often get from Busoni's works, or in a composer like maybe Ronald Stevenson, who was very much influenced by Busoni. But in the Hummel Diabelli Variations, you do hear the bass lines outlining the original Diabelli waltz. And on top of these bass lines, There are passages in chords or arpeggios or runs that take basically 19th century ideas and put them in 21st century clothing, if that makes any sense to you. Many of Hummel's textural ideas take their cue from Beethoven, and actually the 8th variation of the Hummel set liberally quotes from Beethoven's 8th Symphony. This is a very weird variation. And Variation 9, the one that comes right after that, it gravitates around the C major home key, but with a lot of diversion along the road. The Adagio Cantabile Variation 11 also can't really make up its mind what key it's in, but it's fun to listen to it and to try and guess. And here's an interesting variation. The 16th variation totally relates texturally speaking to the Chopin Prelude number 16, in that the bass has the rhythm of ba 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 ba, with bass lines and alternating chords where you're kind of jumping. It's sort of like a stride piano. And the right hand plays relentless, fast 16th notes. So it's kind of like Chopin's 16th Prelude from Opus 28, turned middle inside out. And there are a lot of other stylistic and compositional allusions and borrowings that are done very creatively, I must say. Now, when I first heard this work, the Franz Hummel Diabelli Variations, I felt that while the variations in and of themselves were undeniably clever, I didn't really get a sense of a grand design and cumulative trajectory that I get from the Beethoven work. But maybe that's not quite the point of Franz Hummel's piece. But this piece has really grown on me over the years when I come to revisit it, and I look at the score every once in a while, and it's not very easy to play, although I've enjoyed kind of picking through it and savoring a lot of the details, and I think there's a lot more to this music than I gave it credit for years ago. There are 2 commercial recordings of the Franz Hummel Diabelli Variations. One is on the Neos label. It features pianist Carmen Piazzini. This was the world premiere recording, and it was coupled with the Beethoven Diabelli Variations in a 2-CD set. And then in 2014, there was a recording by Angela Cholakian that came out on the TX Art label. And both of these recordings are really, really fine, and it's hard for me to choose between them because both are excellent. So I just say that whichever of these you find first, that's the one to buy, I suppose. But this is an interesting piece, and definitely check it out. Franz Hummel's Variations on a Theme by Diabelli, composed in 2006 and 2007. This is Jed Distler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to being with you for our next episode.